God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Findley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
And he literally does.
He did this time.
Yes,
he did this time.
That always, it just
Tickles
warms.
you?
It warms the cockles of my heart to know that he will get Walter at some point.
This is God'll Get You for That, Walter, a podcast where we discuss the hit 1970s sitcom Maude.
Yes, it is. And who are we?
We are Tomcat. And
You
I
are?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Last I checked.
And who am I?
I don't know. Who are you?
I don't know.
This is my darling co-host, the fabulous, the decadent, the delicious Miss Toni Homeperm.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It's all coming back to
Glad
me
we
now.
could figure that. Thank you, Celine.
The medication has kicked in.
And this is episode 33.
33.
33. And we're discussing season 2, episode 9, Vivian's Problem.
Vivian's Problem. I love how every episode, sort of has, Maude's this, Walter's that.
Carol's
Vivian's-
this, Arthur's that.
Florida's this. That.
Uh-huh.
I just love
They
that.
needed to name them something.
Yes, of course.
Unfortunately, I did not write down when it originally aired.
I did.
You did?
November-
Oh, when did it originally air?
November 6th, 1973. So
November 6th.
We're in November.
We're in November.
Yes.
And it was directed by Hal Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
written by Norman Lear, Pamela Shays, and the story editor was Bob Weisskopf.
Very nice.
So the episode opens with the
Mm-hmm.
family playing a game of Scrabble.
Scrabble.
They're playing a game of Scrabble. Something that, I personally have never done.
No? Never played Scrabble?
No.
No?
It's done nothing for me.
Oh, I love word games.
I did enjoy. I have enjoyed Words with Friends.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed playing Words with Friends, which I think was the same. Overall
Yeah.
premise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're playing Scrabble, and Walter is winning.
Yes.
Walter is winning, and Vivian is waiting patiently for Vivian to come back from.
Maude is waiting.
Maude is waiting for
Vivian
Vivian
to
to
come
come back from a blind date
That Maude
set up.
set up for her.
That Maude had set up
With Harry... What was his name? Harry?
Linehouse, Harry Lineman.
I know it was Harry.
I know I have it written down somewhere. Harry Lyman.
Harry Lyman.
Lyman.
He was in Fertilizer.
He was in Bull.
In Bull.
He was in Bull.
In Fertilizer.
So they're playing, and Maude is saying, "Oh, how wonderful would it be if Vivian came home and they were in love with each other, and her and Harry could be the couple that Walter and Maude would love to have over for
Right.
parties."
And the great thing about Harry is he's got a job, he's got a foreign car, he's had a vasectomy.
Yes, all these things that a woman in the 1970s would want.
Yes.
I personally would not appreciate my partner having a vasectomy. Although, what would we need it for?
It doesn't matter to me. No import. So Carol is like, why is it so important that you find Vivian a husband? I think it was, and I don't remember what Walter said something at this point, because I know that's where he got the.
So what happened was,
for that
yes, what
thrown at
happened
him.
was, Maude was saying just how, I don't know, when I see Vivian in distress, or when I see Vivian so single, I wanna set her up with someone. I wanna set her up with a man that's, someone that, she can come home to, she can do such and such with.
Right.
And Walter goes, yeah, you usually marry those men.
Yes, she usually marries them.
She usually marries those men
those
that she
men.
would try to set Vivian up with.
Yes.
So Maude, in true to form fashion,
Yes.
turns to Walter and goes, "God'll get you for that, Walter." And we love that. It's almost like, the word of the day. Like, yay,
Yes.
she said it!
Yes. And now, recurring theme throughout the episode is Walter trying to get Maude
to play and finish this game
do
of
her
Scrabble.
turn. Either do her turn or throw in her tiles. So what is she?
Clop.
Clop was the word.
She finally takes her turn and she goes, okay, 14 word score, KLOP, clop. And Walter goes, what's a clop?
Yeah.
And she smacks him on the shoulder
Yes,
and says, that's a clop.
Yes, which...
So Vivian corrects her and says, "Clop is the sound a horse hoof makes, and it's spelt with a C,
with
not
a
a
C,
K."
Not a K. That's
So she says, "Oh well, all right." And then Walter's like, "All right, you need to like put another word, like do that, spell out another word." So she takes the Scrabble pieces, that little board that you put the Scrabble pieces on, and she dunks it in Walter's coffee, saying she just gave Walter's coffee a clop.
A clop.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Now I have that Maude is going on about that she thinks Vivian and Harry are a match made in heaven.
Yep.
And what was it? Something about Carol mentioned something about a bull. And
and then Walter says he's in that too.
Yes, he's in that too. And I think it's about at that point that we...
Viv rolls up.
Yes,
Viv rolls up with Harry. We hear the car horn. Now, it's important to remember that the reason why Viv is staying at Maude's house anyway...
Oh, yes, her house was
being repainted.
So that's why she's staying there, yes.
So that's why she's staying there. So Viv comes in, and she is in a state. She is in a state
Well, she runs in, and then she's trying to... apparently, we never see Harry, but we see him trying to, like...
We see his hand.
Trying to get in the house. Vivian is like pushing the door closed.
Could not want anything more to do with this man.
Yes, and what was she saying? What was it she was saying? She was trying to push him out.
Yeah, she said that she'll be back when she's back from her trip to Armenia. No, Armenia.
Somewhere.
Some tropical island somewhere where I'm coming
Ecuador.
back.
I don't remember.
She was coming back from a trip where she's not going to see Harry anymore.
Right.
But she was going to call. She was going to call when she gets back.
Yes. And
she never will.
She never will.
But I actually have written down because, Walter and Carol were so wanting for Maude to play. Maude turns to them and goes, "You kids have as much romance as a basket of warts." And that tickles me, it does.
Oh, a basket of warts.
A basket of warts.
Oh, so Vivian is now furious.
She's in a state.
With Maude when she gets that door shut.
She says, if this wasn't your house, if my house wasn't being repainted, I'd ask you to leave. In fact, I think I will, but I can't. So she is, again, in a state.
Yes.
So she runs into the kitchen and, Maude says, "Didn't I tell you a match made in heaven?" Completely and totally ignoring the fact that Vivian's date was, in fact, an absolute tragedy.
That it was a disaster.
So Vivian goes into the kitchen. Maude goes into the kitchen to play, to like get away from the game, which she apparently is losing.
Yes.
Which Walter consistently pointed out.
Yes.
And Maude says, "I know you're winning, Walter. I can tell by that 2 little stains under your arm." That tickled me. So they go into the kitchen, and Vivian is eating.
Right.
She is eating the salami.
She's pigging out
on the foods everything. Because it is apparent that she did not eat.
Yes, there was no dinner.
And what was it that Harry did? What did he say that? Did she say that Harry didn't pay?
He, she never said it. She said he picked her up at like 6:30.
6:30. So
she
Vivian assumed
they were going to
dinner.
But there was no dinner. And what was it? Why did Maude bring up something about Harry having 3 hair pieces?
And you know how much they cost. So she mentioned the 3 hair pieces because hair pieces during the 70s were quite expensive.
Okay.
Wigs these days are not.
No.
They are actually quite inexpensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, a good, oh my God, speaking, anecdotal, do you remember, when was it, last year, that there was that one site that was being tossed around by people, and it were these gorgeous lace front hair pieces for men.
Yes, I remember.
And they were
always on Facebook.
Incredibly inexpensive.
Yes.
And there were some people that were just like, "I spent so much money on these beautiful wigs," and then you put them on and they're ungodly.
Yeah, they were trash.
They were unseemly. Yeah. They were not anything like what the picture described.
That's where we started with the memes, here's what I wanted and here's what I got from Wish.
The Wish.com version.
Yeah.
Yes. So hair pieces these days are quite inexpensive. There are some that are quite expensive, and those are human hair.
Yes.
But those are those are a lot more difficult to maintain.
Yeah. My husband, because he does wigs, he does wigs for me, and
Had
he's
no
done it for
idea.
you.
I didn't know.
And no, you didn't know
No.
that. Oh,
This is news. I'm
News to you.
completely surprised.
okay. Okay. So that's how we're gonna play it today.
Oh, shush.
Okay, fine. Just be that way. But yeah.
I have news for you too. Actually,
Oh.
I'm gay.
No.
I kid you not.
No.
Shocking, isn't
You're
it?
kidding me.
Terrifying.
I can't believe it.
Couldn't believe it.
Can't believe it.
Can't believe it.
I knew as soon as she opened her mouth. The second she opened her mouth.
Wow, thank you. See that? So we're even now.
I know.
We're even now.
But my husband has said, because he's worked a little bit with human hair wigs.
Yes.
And as far as like for like drag,
Mm-hmm.
he says he would never use like a human hair wig for drag.
No,
synthetic
you
wigs.
can't.
For
Synthetic
so much
wigs,
better.
you can get a lot more height.
Yes.
You can get a lot more height. You can get a lot more volume.
Yes. And synthetic wigs can be reused more
Than a human hair wig.
over and over.
Because a
than
human hair wig degenerates.
Yes. Yes.
Especially with the amount of product that you decide to put into it. And we drag queens know that you put a lot of product into those wigs.
Yes.
We know the got to be glued effect.
Oh God, yeah.
So the episode does continue, and you know,
And Vivian says it was the worst evening of her life, and then he like has the nerve to ask her, you know, should they go back to his place or hers?
I love. Okay, can we point out the fact that Maude is such a beautiful friend?
Oh,
Such a beautiful friend.
not in this instance.
Where she turns to Viv and she goes, "Well, you know, you shouldn't have worn that dress. That dress does make you look like you've just eaten."
Yeah.
How? What a catty remark to
Yes.
say to a person. That is a drag
I
queen
know.
remark.
Yeah, really.
That is a catty remark.
I would have expected me to say that to you or something.
Thanks. Appreciate you. It's not that every time I sit down I look like a blue whale, but here we are. So, moving gaily forward, you know.
Maude tells Vivian she's got a bad attitude.
Yep. And she says a wet blanket.
47-year-old wet blanket.
And you know, wet blankets end up on single beds.
Single beds, that's right. Right.
And then at that point, I think Walter
He comes
enters
back
and he's
in.
like, Maude, you need to come back and finish the
Yes.
game.
Yes.
And, you know, he's insisted. He said something. I forget what he said, but the remark that Maude says is, Walter, I'm going to let you know it is not too late for me to become a nun.
A nun, that's right.
And then he says, cry, baby Lipsy is gonna have a fitsy. Just juvenile.
Yeah.
Juvenile.
Walter was a big baby this episode.
When isn't he?
Not always. Not always.
True,
but
not always.
He was in this one.
Yes, he was in this.
So Vivian is tired of dating, and so Maude tells her she's been saving another guy for
A tall Armenian.
a tall Armenian
Armenian.
who's sold fluorescent lighting, I believe.
Yes, he's in fluorescent lighting.
Yes.
And then at that point, Vivian's just exhausted.
Yes.
She's so tired. And I mean,
Yes.
honestly, after they don't tell you the the timeline, but 11 blind dates Vivian has
Vivian's
gone
had
on.
11 blind dates.
And I mean, as a queer male in the 20s, in the 2020s, 11 dates in any span of time, whether it's a week or a month, that's really exhausting, especially if all of them turn out to be duds.
Yes.
And I've had my fair share of duds. So, 11 blind dates,
Yes.
and, at that point, Maude's like, well, fine. Be a woman who just sits at home and watches miscarriages on Love of Life.
That's right. I think she told her to lay off the salami. Too.
Yep, lay off my salami.
Lay off the salami, and it was a big.
It was a very large
big
salami.
salami.
That was obnoxious.
Yeah, obnoxious.
That was rather obnoxious.
Obnoxiously big.
So we come to find out that the 11th date, that
There was
Vivian
one
went
good
on, there
date.
was one good date.
Yes.
And it was with a
Theodore.
Well, she did not want to initially tell.
That's
Maude.
right. Yes.
Has
Yes.
there ever been an instance in your life where you did not want to tell your friends about a date that you've gone on?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, there are dates that I've gone on that I just won't tell anybody.
Oh well, I'm sure of that.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. getting back at me for that wiggle mark, aren't you?
Of course.
But I mean, there are certain dates that I just won't talk about because they just ended in tragedy.
Yes.
So in Vivian's,
her defense?
Thank you, that's it. In Vivian's defense.
In her defense.
She did go out with a man that is 70 years old.
He was a retired
naval officer named Theodore.
And he's but the thing is, he was 70 years old.
He's 70 years old. And, Maude's like, wait, he's what? So I just love that bit where Vivian's Maude's like, I want you to repeat what you just said to me. Yes. And Vivian doesn't repeat what Maude wants to hear. But Maude obviously heard 70-year-old. I love that bit of dialogue.
Now the thing is, my husband's 70.
But you're how old?
I'm 57 now.
You're 57.
Yes.
I think at that point, Vivian and Maude were the same age, so they were 47.
47, yeah.
So that's 47 and 70. That's 30. That's a little under 20 years. Or a little over 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a little over a 20-year difference.
Yeah.
I know that we've had this question before, but how do you feel about May-December relationships?
Doesn't bother me. I mean,
yeah.
You know.
And I know we've had this conversation before because I do remember mentioning one of the times when I was on that Grinding Stone app where I did meet up with someone who looked fairly young, and then we were in bed together, and he told me how old he was, and I just immediately got up and left.
How much older was he than you? She's gulping water, gathering her strength.
I think I had just turned 30. He was 30 years older than I was.
Oh.
He was 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's...
And when he told me, I was just like, oh my God, I slept with someone who could potentially be my father.
Yes. True.
That takes you out of it. Yes. I don't care what anybody says. That takes you out of it.
Yes.
Now, I have no problem.
I've never been with anybody that much older than myself.
Are you trying to call me a harlot?
Oh, no. Never. Never.
Thank you.
I just out now call you a whore. Like all my friends.
It was definitely an experience. Now I have no problem.
How was the sex?
It wasn't great.
You didn't name it.
It wasn't great.
They didn't name it.
There's a name for it. The name is Maude. The name of the sex was Maude. Absolutely no.
Oh, well, that's sad.
That is sad.
At least if
Tomcat
the
has
sex
many
was good.
If the sex was good, it would have been worth it. But it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
It just wasn't.
Have you ever had? Because I did have one experience, a sexual experience, where like the sex was like so bad. It was so bad. I had to.
How bad was it?
It was so bad. I had to immediately like rush out and hook up with somebody else to like wipe out the experience of the bad sex. That's how bad sex was.
Wow, that's awful. That's absolutely tragic.
This person was like, you talk about a starfish, like. I have an image of a starfish, and it's not the image you want. No, it's not, especially in a sexual connotation.
Correct.
But yeah, he was like a starfish.
That's awful.
It was like I shaved my back for this.
I shaved my back for that. When we release the God Will Get You for That Walter line of outfits, the first shirt we're going to have, it's going to be God Will Get You for That Walter on the front, and on the back it'll be I shaved my back for this.
That's right.
Wow, yes. That's absolutely tragic. Yes. I have never had that happen to me. I have had nights where I've had two in one. I've had times where I've had two in one night. Like I went to one and then I went to another. But I've never. Both of the times was absolutely decent, at least for me.
Oh. Yes.
We all have a past.
Of
We
course.
all have a past. It happens.
Of course, everyone's got a past.
But it's just it's very fascinating to like have that sort of age conversation when it comes to relationships. And it's important that we're having this conversation because to dial it back a little bit, to take away from like the frivolity of it all. One of my friends actually just shared a Variety article of Bryan Singer. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is.
Yes, the X-Men director.
The X-Men
He's
director.
been involved in a lot of controversy over
A lot of young burgeoning male actors
that he's supposedly acted very inappropriately with, and all these things.
And I mean, it's funny that we mention that because it's not exclusively a male problem.
No.
If you remember, Alice Ripley is also involved in a similar controversy.
No, I don't remember that.
So I don't
even know who she is. Who is
Alice
she?
Ripley is a very famous Broadway actress. She was in Next to Normal. That's really the only one that's coming to mind. She also did a 2-woman show with her and Emily Skinner, who's another very famous Broadway actress. And it was reported that a young woman was involved in a intimate sexual relationship with Alice Ripley. And, the woman at the time I think was 16 or 17.
Oh.
And, she would be with Alice during certain productions. She would tour with Alice when Alice would tour, like do national tours and whatnot. And it became a really diabolical situation for this young girl. And, again, it's not exclusively a male issue. There's also females who will take advantage.
But it's rare.
Very rare.
It's rare.
Very rare. I mean, look at, you can take the Harvey Weinsteins, you can take the Bryan Singers. And they all get theirs in the end.
Yeah.
They all get theirs in the end. But it is, it is a conversation to be had where, you'll have these sort of older individuals take advantage of a younger type.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking 4 years, 5 years. Like, this is substantial. Like, there's 20, 30, 40-year differences between some of these people.
Speaking of, like, in the acting field, now, of course, the most notorious case was Roman Polanski.
Yes.
Now, I remember as a little kid, like, and that was like happening, where they found out that he had this sexual relationship with her. I think she was only 13 at the time, and he was like, I think at least in his 30s.
Didn't he like run off? He fled the States.
He fled to France, and he has been living in France all these decades and has not had like. There's been like no repercussions for him, and he's even been like, gotten like awards and things like that, and it's like,
well, because if you're a man, you get away with everything.
Just about, yeah.
If you are a white male, you get away with everything.
But
I mean, look at Elvis and Priscilla.
Yeah,
Elvis was how old, and Priscilla was 16.
Right.
Or 16 or 17. I know she was young.
Or even younger.
14. I think no, you're right. I think she was 14.
Yeah.
I think she was 14 years old when they got married. There was an article that was released.
Well, no, they waited. I think
they waited until she was legal.
They waited till she was of legal age to get married. But she, she was intimate with Elvis. She is, I remember like she did like a TV movie, and there were things that she revealed where like they would actually be in bed together, and there were things they wouldn't go all the way, but she was interacting with him sexually, before she was she was still a child.
Before she was of age.
She was still a child, yeah.
There was, it's funny. There was a just sort of bring it back to a lighter note. There was I think a Nubian prince or some higher type in a specific community where child brides were a real thing, and he made it so that he would yes, you're still going to have a harem. You're still going to have a sort of polygamy situation, but he would not accept child brides. Oh. And I call that growth.
Well, it's just
growth. It's a start. It's a start. 2021, it's a start.
Talk about the ultimate definition of baby steps.
Blech.
Yeah.
Why did you have to bring it there?
Yeah.
So that type of it's very interesting, and it's a very there's going to be a little bit more conversation to that later on in the episode. But just suffice it to say, if you are a young person and an older person does like address you in a specific way and makes you feel good about yourself and talks you up and whatnot, just be mindful of how old they are and be mindful of how you're addressing them and how they're addressing you. And again, just be mindful, because the internet is vast.
Oh, God,
The internet is very vast, and there are all walks of life on the internet. So just be mindful and be careful and be safe.
Just say no, kids.
Just say no. Aw, Nancy Reagan. Did you finally see any of the articles or TikToks that I told you about?
No, I did not yet. I did not. I did not yet.
It tickles me. It tickles me. I'm trying to think of like the appropriate word to use here, but the absolute decimation of her character because of how she used to behave in Hollywood years ago. Because that's what she, that's what she did. She's the reason the casting couch became a joke.
Oh, jeez. My.
All I can say is, couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Any hoozlebeans, moving
Anyway,
forward.
back to
McKinley. Theodore was so old he could have shot Lincoln.
Yes.
And then like Vivian goes, no, and so she says, no, not Lincoln.
Yeah.
Someone says, all right, fine, McKinley.
McKinley, yes.
So he could have shot McKinley.
Yes. I have that Vivian is talking about that she's going to go out with him again because I think his birthday was coming up.
Yep, his 71st birthday was going to be that Saturday.
That's right.
And she says, darn it, I'm going. She says, Maude says, marvelous, but just so you know, if you're intending on getting him a gift, don't buy him a long-playing record.
Don't get him a long-playing record. That's
just
right.
So catty.
Yeah.
So catty.
I know.
So I think at that point, Maude goes into Arthur enters. Vivian and Maude are still, I think, in the kitchen arguing. But I think I have it written down. Walter says, you never finish the games you lose. So I think at that point...
I think Maude and Vivian, they went upstairs to continue the fight.
Did they?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Because Maude, at one point, she comes down and she wants Walter to go up.
To go upstairs.
And console Vivian.
Yes.
But
so
Walter
Arthur
doesn't want to do it.
Yes. Arthur walks in and says, well, I heard you and Maude arguing, so I thought you two were just spending a quiet evening at home. That was a bit of a funny joke. So Maude comes downstairs and, yes, because Vivian and Maude go back into there. Walter says, Maude, you never finish the games you lose. And I think at that point, Maude says to Walter, I'm playing the game of life, and right now Vivian is throwing hers away.
Right. And I know at one point Maude tells Walter that he's all mustache and no heart.
All mustache and no heart. So Maude says to Walter, "Why don't you go upstairs and talk to Vivian?" So at that point, Arthur says, "Well, Vivian might not be a guest, but you're one heck of a host." Obviously, saying that Walter is going to go upstairs and console Vivian with his penis. That was the joke.
Okay.
Like that was the joke. That was where it was leaning towards.
Right.
And
I know it's about at this point that don't we get to the Arthur, darling.
But I mean, even before that,
Yes.
Maude says to Arthur, "What could Viv have to talk about? Like, what could Viv ask a 70-year-old naval officer?" And Walter says, "Remember the Maine." And Maude exclaims, "Remember the clop."
Remember the clop.
So Arthur came in just wanting oregano, and he let himself in. He let himself into the house.
Only in sitcoms do neighbors just waltz right in the door.
Yes. So at that point,
In real life, if that happened to me, I'd be naked in my kitchen.
Correct. That's honestly one of the reasons why I'm just like, okay, I'm coming over now.
Yes,
I will always let you know that I'm on my way. I will not show up randomly.
Please do not.
That's all the drag queen down the street needs to say.
That's right. She don't need to see that.
No,
Ain't nobody need to see that.
Ain't nobody need to see that.
Ain't nobody need to see that.
Ain't nobody need to see that. So, at that point, Maude turns to Arthur and says, "Arthur, darling." So at that point, Maude gets the bright idea to try and pair Vivian and Arthur up. Because Maude says, you're the obvious choice. Because, you know...
Well, no, she wasn't trying to pair them up. She just wanted Arthur to be the one to console her.
Yes, just sort of have a conversation with them.
Yes.
And, you know, Arthur...
Because I don't think in a million years Maude ever wanted to, like, fix Arthur and Vivian up.
Especially based on the epilogue.
Right.
But we'll get to that.
Yes.
So, Vivian comes back downstairs, and again, she's in that beautiful, beautiful purple gown. Beautiful purple gown.
Yes.
And also, I adored B. Arthur's outfit. That sort of satiny, sage green top with the I don't even want to know what I would consider that, like that jacquard, long flowing duster.
Yes, sort of had a bit of a Indian.
Oh, very much
flair.
So. Very Indian flair to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always adore their costumes. I do, and that's why I made B, and that's why I made Maude and Vivian 2 drag queens instead of having Vivian be not
a drag queen.
Not a drag queen. So Vivian is coerced to go to Arthur's house.
Right.
Because Maude says, "I'm responsible for ruining your life. You owe me a favor."
That's right.
So the two of so Arthur and Vivian go, and at that point, Maude and Walter are sitting down, and I think Walter says something to the effect of. Walter says something about sex.
Right, yes.
And Maude says sex isn't everything. And Walter, raises his eyebrows up and down. And Maude turns to him and goes, "The hell am I talking to you for?"
Right.
So at that point, we end up in Arthur. We have a commercial break, and we open on Arthur's apartment.
Kitchen.
That's Arthur's kitchen. Yes, Arthur's kitchen and Arthur's home.
Yes, which a set we've never seen before.
Never seen before. And I think that was one of only 2 times we've seen Arthur's apartment. I mean, Arthur's house. I think that's the only time we've seen Arthur's kitchen. Arthur's house. That's the first time we've ever seen Arthur's house. So
Arthur was cooking.
Arthur is diligently cooking his shrimp.
Making shrimp, right?
He's making garlic shrimp. And they're enjoying each other's company. And
no, Vivian's. Remember, she's yelling.
Oh, that's right. She's yelling.
She's yelling, and Arthur he actually points out to her
that she's raising her voice.
She's raising her voice, and she realizes that she's doing it.
I really am yelling at you, aren't I?
Yes. Yes. And Vivian was commenting that Arthur he's never noticed her before.
Yes, Vivian said, "Arthur, what are you talking about? You've known each other. You've known me for 10 years. You've never even looked at me. You've never noticed me.
Never noticed her."
And he goes, "Yes, of course I've noticed you." She goes, "When?" So he's like, "Well, there was the one time when I just some nonsensical thing he said."
And Vivian is saying how she feels like she's always playing a part when she's going out on these dates.
Yep.
And Arthur points out that she's not playing a part right now. She's being herself.
She's just being herself.
And he feeds her something.
Feeds her some garlic shrimp.
It did not look like shrimp. Whatever he gave her.
It was supposed to be shrimp. I just think
didn't look like shrimp.
It was. I think it was probably a colorization problem.
I don't know. It looked like marshmallow fluff.
I don't even think it was marshmallow fluff. It may have been scallops.
I don't know, but I don't know what it was. It was not shrimp. I'm sorry.
It was too white to be shrimp.
It was too white to be shrimp.
Too white to be shrimp. It needed a little pink.
Yes. And it was looked like gloppy. I don't know.
It looked like
maybe it was pureed shrimp. I don't know. With the mixture that goes into shrimp toast.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. I could just feel my gout flaring up just looking at it.
I'm so sorry. I apologize profusely.
Let me tell you, nothing has been worse about having gout than not being able to eat shrimp. Because it is one of my most favorite foods in the world.
Really?
Yes.
Never knew that.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry.
Absolutely. One of my most favorite foods of all time. Shrimp and...
I have to cut back on pizza.
How come?
Because of a lactose intolerance.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not bad, but I know eventually it's gonna get worse. I know it's gonna get worse.
Well, actually, we're veering into dietary territory now. Because I picked it up for my husband because he's also lactose intolerant.
Yes.
And also has gout.
Yes.
But I did find this non-dairy mozzarella. And
Okay, you never told me how it was.
It was good. It was good. So I used that. I got like a boboli, and I had my own sauce, and I had like turkey pepperoni.
Okay.
And I put the vegan mozzarella on, and you know some a little bit of real grated cheese because when you can sort of have some of that when you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Grated cheese is very low.
Very low
in lactose.
Very low.
And so I made like a boboli pizza like with that.
Yeah.
And it was delicious.
He was able to eat it.
And he was able to eat it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
There's hope for the lactose intolerant.
There is. Yeah. You can find because it is a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And but you can find now a lot of lactose-free cheeses where you couldn't. Used to not be able to.
When I stayed at my cousin's, they actually bought me Lactaid, which was very sweet. I personally prefer to drink either almond milk or oat milk, but because I've never had Lactaid before, because I'm not gonna get Lactaid because Lactaid's for old people. I don't want to be old. I want to be hip and young.
Yeah.
But I tried it and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. So there's hope for us out there, kids. There's hope for us out there.
Yes. And last night I had made baked potatoes because I had found a lactose-free sour cream. So he was able to like have a baked potato with sour cream.
That must have been a nice feeling.
It was. It was nice. But as yet, no substitute for shrimp.
Oh.
At least I don't know. I think
It
there
exists. It
I
exists.
think, it seems nowadays there's like a vegan substitute for everything.
There is.
I don't know how good a vegan shrimp would be.
I mean, I've had because my mother has a very bad shellfish allergy.
Oh.
And she has bought imitation crab, and it tastes just like
that
regular
I've had.
crab.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's imitation shrimp out there too.
I guess. Yeah.
It would just be,
Yeah.
You'd have to try it and see.
Yeah. I've had the imitation crab. I've made crab salad with it and things like that. So, but I have to investigate vegan shrimp.
Vegan shrimp.
So
at that point, Vivian is now smitten with Arthur.
He fed her the shrimp.
Yep, and then they start posing A.E. Housman poems at each other.
Yes, they're reciting poetry to each other.
1 in 20. I can't remember any of the poems, but because I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible person.
Oh, and there was one thing when Arthur did feed Vivian out of his hand.
Yeah, and he said, "It seems like you're eating out of." I mean, Vivian says, "Like you have me eating out of your hand."
And he remarks that he's sterile.
Yes, don't worry, I'm sterile.
Yes.
And he says, "I'll be leaving you in stitches." So,
yes.
Dr. Humor. Dr. Humor.
And he's telling
because he apparently has said, "I saved a man's life today in surgery." That was a recurring joke.
Yes. And he's telling her that not all men are after sex. And
there are people out there called wet men.
I've never freaking heard of
I've
wet men.
I've never heard of a wet man before.
In my life.
No.
What is a wet man?
I don't know.
Yes.
I could think of something dirty, but I don't want to because I am a clean queen.
Lies.
Correct.
All lies.
So, wet men would be considered emotional men, people who puddle up at a beautiful sunset, who are interested in a simple A cup, which I thought was very... To say that you are interested in a simple A cup.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah.
Are we talking about breasts? Is that where we're at right now?
I guess.
Like
meaning it's like if a woman is basically flat chested, that he's not interested in the boobs.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know.
This was sort of an episode where they're trying to humanize Arthur, and even in trying to humanize Arthur, it's still a challenge.
Yeah, very much a challenge.
So at that point he goes, men who are interested in domestic values, emotional values.
Right.
And then he throws himself at Vivian.
Vivian and grabs her.
Grabs her, and then Vivian screams, and then we cut to the Findlays.
The Findlays. Maude and Walter are
still diligently playing
Scrabble,
and Walter's like, "Come on, Maude, like Nixon is a proper noun." And Maude goes, "Not in this house.
Not in this house, it isn't."
So they're doing that, and then at that point, Vivian crashes through the door, and she screams, "Trustworthy hell!"
And she is disheveled. Her
dress is torn.
She's missing a shoe.
Yep. She is de-stressed.
Yes.
She is in distress, is what she's in right now.
And she's screaming that the Chef Boyardee turned into the
Galloping Gourmet.
You're probably too young to remember the Galloping Gourmet.
You'd be surprised. I've seen commercials for the Galloping Gourmet.
You have? Okay.
Don't remember them, but I do know that it exists.
Yes. We used to watch the Galloping Gourmet. I remember that when I was very, very little.
There was... I want to say it was a couple of months ago. I was watching Turner Classic Movies because, old woman.
Yes. Fair.
And there was a chef who was demonstrating certain kitchen tools. And I was fascinated. I was like, I want to know where you can find these instruments. I want to buy these instruments. I need these instruments in my home because I was convinced that they worked. Because I was seeing the old-fashioned ice trays where you would pull back the lever and it would release. It would release the ice cubes. I saw a very specific-looking can opener. I saw the hand mixer that you would put in the dough and mix it, hand crank it. I even saw a descaler. For fish descaler. And I'm like, I want all of these things. I want this. I want the knife set. I want it all. And it was in black and white.
I want the world. I want the whole world.
Thank you, just for making me feel like Veruca Salt in that moment. But I was fascinated.
We should all feel like Veruca Salt at some point in our lives. We really should.
But I was very taken with those instruments. Don't know how we got to that.
The Galloping Gourmet.
The Galloping Gourmet. Thank you.
Galloping Gourmet. Yes, and from the Galloping Gourmet, we went into the Republican Sex Fiend.
Yes, Republican Sex Fiend. And Walter said probably one of the funniest lines in the episode, where he said, Maude says, how could a Republican turn into a sex fiend? And Walter says, well, maybe they're trying to rebrand themselves for the next election.
Yeah.
And that tickled me.
Oh, God, yeah.
That tickled me, especially when you take into consideration just how sexual some Republicans can be.
Now, it's a proven fact. Wherever the Republican, party conventions are, Grindr in that area blows up. Blows up. There's nothing that a Republican likes more than
being a hypocrite.
Discreet, casual gay sex.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Ladybug Lindsay. We're looking at you. So it's it's so fascinating just to hear that joke, and then that's a 1970s joke in 2021. That is it just makes you laugh that much.
I know. So Vivian, though, she's had it with the Republicans
and the Democrats. She just wants some peace and freedom.
Yes, and she runs upstairs.
Runs upstairs to obviously console herself and to change clothes.
Yeah, and Maude she's furious.
She is bereft with grief and so furious at Walter.
Because she blames him because Arthur's his best friend.
Yep. And I send Vivian over there to have a quiet, calm conversation.
Right.
He thinks I probably sent her over there to clean up his acne.
Right. Yes.
Another line that tickled me.
And I believe it's about at this point Arthur comes in.
And he's also disheveled.
He's disheveled.
His collar's up on one side. His scarf is on the...
He's carrying the shoe.
He has Vivian's shoe in his hand.
Vivian had lost. It's sort of like a Cinderella moment.
In a very... very frustrating, disturbing way.
In a very perverse way.
Correct.
I mean,
So Arthur is babbling.
Yeah.
Babbling.
He's trying to make all these excuses about like what happened.
The whole house
The
lurched.
house lurched. And there was something about the
She went
cesspool,
running. There was something about
right?
the cesspool being a problem.
I think that was later, but
Vivian went running and she got her foot caught in the bear
Yes.
rug.
Yeah.
And he said she probably thought I was biting her ankle. And he just stops himself and says, she didn't come over here telling you some crazy story about me attacking her, did she?
Yeah. And Maude points out that Jack
the Ripper had a better alibi.
So at this point, Vivian comes back down. Now she's changed.
What happened? Come over for the kill?
Yeah, she's changed. You know, and she's yelling at Arthur, telling him he should go home.
Yep.
You and your wet men.
Yep. And the camera panning to Maude and Walter, and Maude mouthing
Wet men. Yeah.
And even Walter was confused by that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Arthur's like, I saved a man's life. How can I do that?
Yeah.
And Maude says, you say that one more time, Arthur, and I'll even things up.
And he's trying to say that Vivian has overreacted.
Yep.
And
she called the A.E. Hausman, like, sex poems. She called them sex poems. And Arthur's just like frantic, like trying to look for an excuse and says, Walter, you believe me, don't you? And Walter says, don't look at me. I'm just waiting for a bus.
Yeah. Now, in 2021 environment, this would be extremely serious.
Oh, it would be extremely serious. Correct. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Very serious.
It's important to remember that if a man tries to attack you, that would be considered what Arthur did by today's standards would be considered sexual assault.
Yeah.
It would be considered sexual assault because, you know, he threw himself at Vivian. Vivian did not consent to Arthur throwing himself at her. And, you know, it's very important to point out that the resolve of this episode would not be what it is today.
Right.
And, you know, we'll get to the resolve in just a moment, but this is not something that would be easily resolved. This would be, charges would be filed. You know, if social media existed, it would be all over, like doctor sexually assaults housewife.
He'd like lose his medical license.
Yeah.
He probably would go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be a lot of serious repercussions. But
the thing to remember is Vivian got away.
Yeah.
There are some women who have been in a situation where Vivian was and were not able to get away. And not just women. It's very important to point that out. Yes, you are correct. Not just women. And, you know, it's very difficult in this day and age because, you know, you can file the police report, but the police may not do anything.
Yeah.
Especially if they're, like, you know, rape kits do exist, but they don't prove everything.
Right.
And unfortunately, it is always going to be a case of he said, she said, or he said, or she said, she said.
Yes.
And it becomes very, very difficult. It's
why a lot of these cases go unreported.
Yes, go
because
unreported or
the victim
unnoticed.
does not want to put themselves through.
I mean, that exists. I mean, I remember reading on Tumblr and Facebook and Instagram, like, this is why I didn't report. This is why I didn't come forward. This is why I didn't say anything.
Right.
You know, because you will have people that will say, oh, well, that person's a doctor. That person's a student. You'll be ruining their life. You'll be ruining their career.
Right.
And, you know, there are so many people out there that the amount of times a rape gets reported and is actually taken fully to court is very small. Because, you know, people will always make excuses.
Right.
Like, they were a good kid.
Yeah.
They didn't deserve this. They didn't know what they were doing. I'm sorry. If a person is sexually assaulted, they should be listened to. Here at God Will Get You For That, Walter, we support victims. We will always support victims. We will always lend an ear. We will always hear a person out, because the amount of times you hear about someone lying about being, it is so few and far between.
Yeah.
And there are times when, like, there'll be a report out there where it was like, one student lied about being raped, and it's like, this is why, this is why, this is why. And it's like, it's always going to be a case-by-case basis. And it's
Yes.
so incredibly, incredibly frustrating.
And it's why, the percentage of sexual assaults that actually even do get reported, it's a very low percentage because the person who has been victimized, a lot of times they're afraid, they were embarrassed,
Look at the Brett Kavanaugh scandal, the Harvey Weinsteins, the Me Too movement. Like, all of this exists because people did not come forward with their sexual assaults.
Right. And in like cases like that, like Harvey Weinstein, this is where the person has power.
Yes.
And they're
again, like we were just discussing, the Bryan Singer with
Brian.
Like Bryan Singer and the article that I just read, Taylor Lautner. Do you remember Taylor Lautner?
Yeah.
He was Jacob in the Twilight series. He was another one that Bryan Singer fooled around with. And I'm waiting patiently for Taylor Lautner to come out, but it's not my story to tell, it's his. And it is on that person to come forward with their story.
Right.
And they should be listened to. That's my feeling on this subject.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times people don't want to come forward because
they don't want to come forward because they don't want to raise a stink. They don't want to get in trouble. Some people have received death threats.
Right.
Some people have actually gone missing when they come out about these sorts of things. And it's just, it's really quite frustrating how men and women in positions of power can take advantage of.
But usually men.
More often than not, it's men.
men.
More often than not, it is men who will, sort of do these things, and it's just very challenging. It's very frustrating, and in this instance, I feel like it was sort of swept under the rug. There was actually, it's funny. There was a comment on one of our videos, and it was about the Maude's dilemma. I don't know if it was part 1 or part 2 that someone left this paragraph.
Yes, I was just reading it yesterday.
I was reading that yesterday too. reading that yesterday too.
Yeah.
Because there was that one comment that was just like, this is straight up indoctrination. And it's like, it's not though.
Yeah.
It's not indoctrination. It's a view of, it's a window. You're looking inside this window of a person's life and their decision to go through with an abortion.
Right.
But someone left this really thorough critique of the episode.
Right.
And it's important to know that the episode was written through one lens. But this person, I don't know if they were male or female, or transgender, where they gave this sort of thorough view of what could have happened, where they could have had Maude feel more guilty about doing this, more remorse about doing this, where they could have had Walter be more supportive and understanding of potentially having or not having a child, where Carol would be not so much in support of doing this. It was the way that the author of the piece, and when I say piece, I mean the paragraph that was on the comment, there could have been more done with the episode. But it's also important to know that this was written in 1972. It was 1972 when Roe v. Wade became the law of the land. It was 1972 when this episode was written, so there really wasn't that much argument for or against it like there is now.
Right.
There is so much more argument against it than there was years ago.
And really, we're talking about, they were trying to discuss this topic in a limited format of presenting it on a
national scale, a sitcom.
That's like, a half hour show.
Yep.
We're really,
nowadays you have sitcoms that are sometimes hour long, sometimes like a 2-parter of Maude that would be an hour long each episode discussing this.
But the actual thing that we're talking about, abortion, is something that could be discussed for hours, days, weeks, months.
It's still being discussed today.
It's still going on in the Supreme Court.
Like, what's in July? In July, there's going to be a vote on whether or not Roe should be not so much overturned, but that there will be stipulations to Roe v. Wade.
Right.
And, that's a very terrifying thing for women because, the one thing that is important to note when it comes to abortion is that the reason that these laws exist is to make it easier for women to get abortions, and it is easier for women to have reproductive rights.
It's important for a woman to have access to a safe abortion.
Yes, because it's these laws
because
that are
just
against
outlawing abortion is not going to get rid of abortion.
Correct. It's going to get rid of safe.
It will get rid of safe abortion.
So it's interesting how like these conversations will still manage to come up. And again,
Yes.
it's like we always say, the more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yes.
And it is rather unfortunate. So yes, in this instance, Arthur would be lambasted for what he did, to say the least.
He'd be in a lot of trouble.
He would be in a lot
But
of
he
trouble.
wasn't in this episode.
He was not.
And now he starts to admit that
This was the first time I felt affection for a woman in years.
in years.
First time in years I felt affection for a woman. And at that point, Vivian softens.
Yes.
Vivian
She gets
softens.
all very like giggly and flirty and everything. And please tell us, Maude's hilarious line at this point.
I don't believe it, Walter. He's turning into a human being before our very eyes.
It's like a sci-fi movie,
like
right?
like a science fiction movie. And Vivian turns around and goes, "Maude, please."
Yes.
Because obviously she wants to,
there was something about still waters in the cesspool, too.
Yes, Arthur says, still, because that's what Vivian said.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vivian said something to the effect of, oh God, like you wouldn't have attacked me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Arthur says, well, I probably would have.
Mm-hmm.
Still waters run deep. And I'm like, great, very, very cringy.
Yeah.
Very cringy line.
Yeah.
Very, very cringy line.
Yeah.
And that's when Maude says, well, that's why he has trouble with his cesspool.
Yes.
So,
Arthur and Vivian go back to Arthur's house.
They end up going back because they mention artichoke bottoms.
The artichoke
bottom vinaigrette.
Yes.
So
actually, I'm assuming they're talking about artichoke hearts.
I love
artichoke hearts.
Hate artichokes.
Really?
I do not like artichokes.
I love the artichoke too.
I do not like artichoke.
No.
I don't like stuffed artichoke.
Oh, I love stuffed artichoke.
I love artichoke dip and I love artichoke hearts. Do not well, the reason I like artichoke hearts is because I grew up eating my mother's antipasto. So it would be, the mushrooms and the vinegar, the artichoke hearts and the vinegar, and I would love, and then the cheeses and the meats and just, thinking about it makes my mouth water.
Actually, we used to have, we haven't had it in years because of all the cheese, but Frank's, I think it was his grandmother. It was a family recipe.
Yes.
That was this quiche, basically.
Yeah.
That was made with pepperoni and artichoke hearts and grated cheese and mozzarella.
Delicious.
So freaking good.
So
freaking good. But now, because, the lactose intolerance, it's something you can't eat. Although, I guess now we could have it.
Now with the mozzarella.
With the vegan mozzarella. I have to tell him that.
That's very true.
I have to pick that up.
Might be worth trying out.
Yes.
So they go, they leave, but they also repeat one last A.E. Housman poem where Vivian goes, and I am 2 and 20, and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. So they go and leave. There's an audience applause, and Walter turns to Maude and goes, "Wow, did you see that?"
Yeah.
And Maude goes, "Yes, I saw. Out of the ashes of this evening, like the phoenix." Out of the ashes of this evening may rise one of the more depressing relationships of this century.
Yes.
And she says, Walter, what have I done?
Yes.
What have I done?
Yes, you can't believe it. She's fixed up Vivian with Arthur.
So the epilogue comes.
Break, we come back.
And Vivian, Arthur drops Vivian off at Maude's because obviously that's where Vivian is staying.
Yes.
And, Vivian and Arthur are very coquettish with each other and very sweet. And Vivian calls Arthur Arturo.
Yeah.
Just gagged me with a spoon.
And it's important to note that Maude and Walter are
still playing Scrabble.
They're still
playing this game of Scrabble. And Vivian and Arthur share a romantic evening. That's what happens. So Arthur and Viv part in a very Romeo and Juliet way. And Vivian races upstairs saying, "Where has this man been all my life? He's so sweet and so wonderful and so this and that and the third."
Yeah.
And she races upstairs like a schoolgirl, and Maude delivers the closing line. "Walter, how many points for Upchuck?" And
that was the end of the episode.
That was the end of the episode.
Now this is like a recurring thing, a lot in entertainment.
Yes.
Where you have like that sort of like, yeah, and I think actually if you go back to like old plays in olden times,
yes,
they would talk about like there would actually be like a rape scene where it was kind of like this thing of the man, sort of like attempting to force himself on the woman rebuffing, but then they get together at the end.
They get together at the end anyway.
Yeah, and it's, I think like in the Fantastics, there's I think it's the rape ballet or something. Yep. It's actually the actual.
It's called the rape ballet.
The rape ballet, yeah, and it's that whole idea of like the man like trying to force himself on the woman,
yes,
the woman rebuffing,
yes,
but then they still end up getting together, and
yes,
it's
quite frustrating.
Yeah, it is
quite frustrating.
It is.
But I mean, from an entertainment standpoint, that was the norm.
Yeah.
From an entertainment standpoint, that was the norm. Like, again, I'm going to
Which is the bad thing about it, was that it was normalized.
It was normalized.
So,
like, look at Petruchio and Kate in Taming of the Shrew. Mm-hmm. Like, you have Petruchio, who's just like this masculine, heterosexual, domineering man, taking control of this, again, very aggressive, domineering female.
Right.
And in the end, Kate becomes this docile, tamed pussycat.
Yeah, what happened to her?
What happened to that fiery tart of Padua?
Exactly.
And, it's frustrating because it's like you take away a woman's agency.
Yeah.
And that's what Arthur did. Arthur took away Vivian's agency.
Yeah.
But it was also because Vivian gave her agency to Arthur.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where you sort of like have Vivian and Arthur, where it's like Arthur's the dominating force, and with the relationship between Walter and Maude, it's Maude is the dominating force. So it's always very interesting to see that sort of juxtaposition between the two of them.
Sort of makes me think of, remember, Jessica Lange played her. I don't remember what the name of the movie was. She played Frances Farmer.
Okay.
The old-time Hollywood actress who, was classified as like troublesome,
box office poison.
Yeah, and not just so much that, but because she spoke her mind and she had her own opinions,
like Katharine Hepburn.
But unfortunately for Frances Farmer, like her family was able to like take control of her, over her, and they literally lobotomized her.
Yep.
I mean, horrible, because, she was just a woman who
was in charge of her own agency.
In charge of her own destiny.
In charge of her own destiny. In charge of it's so interesting to see how Hollywood writes women in the last 30, 40, 50 years. How we've like gone from, you start with Maude. You start with Maude as this sort of embodiment of feminine empowerment and female liberation, and then you have movies like what was it, Sophisticated Young Woman, or it was the one movie that I really wanted to see, where it was this woman who would not get drunk, but she would act drunk in the bar. She would get taken home by men, and they would either try to sexually assault her, and she would just snap out of this sort of drunken super, and she's like, "What are you doing?" Like completely and totally. I forget what the heck.
When was it made?
Recently.
Oh.
It came out, I want to say, in I think 2019.
Oh, I'm not familiar with it.
It's something called Something Young Women. And I'm pretty sure it is. We will obviously like get back to you guys on that one, but that was a movie where a woman was in charge of her own agency. And it's just interesting to see the way a woman has been written. Like you also look at the movie, oh God, with not Viola. I think it was Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson, and Olivia
Munn? No.
No, not Olivia Munn. But it was the movie about the black female scientist.
Yes. Yes.
Something Numbers?
Yes.
Something Numbers. Oh my God.
I can't remember the name, but
My brain's gone.
It was an incredible movie.
It was a beautifully written movie.
Yes.
And you just, again, it's seeing how Hollywood writes women, and not only white women, but black women. And, you know, there's a continuing empowerment in that. Like Wonder Woman, written by and directed by Patty Jenkins. Like very female empowerment, female power. And then you look at, you know, the way the Suicide Squad movie was written and directed, where Harley Quinn is sort of like very sexually scantily clad. And like that sort of bimbo, like if you comparing the two, comparing the Birds of Prey movie with that way that Harley Quinn was written and directed, compared to the Suicide Squad, it's like two different characters because one was written for the male gaze,
right,
and the other one was written more for female liberation and female empowerment.
Right.
So it's very interesting to see, and again, even in Maude, we're going to see Vivian sort of go. Vivian eventually becomes written as this sort of ditzy, dizzy, like uneducated woman.
Right.
Whereas Maude is this, again, sort of aggressive, militant feminist.
Right.
So it's interesting to continue to see that juxtaposition and that constant back and forth. But yeah, so that was Vivian's problem.
That was her problem. That was her problem.
We thank you for listening. If you would like to follow us, you can on all forms of social media. You can on Facebook at God'll Get You for That Walter. On YouTube at God'll Get You for That Walter. On Instagram at Findley's Friendly Appliances. You can email us at findleysfriendlyappliances@gmail.com.
Correct.
If you would like to follow me, you can at That Tomcat on all forms of social media. And that's Tomcat with 2 T's.
That's
so
right.
Cat with 2 T's.
Yes.
And you can all over social media. And where can they follow you, my darling?
They can find Toni Homeperm, and that's
Tony with an I.
With an I.
With an I. Tony with an I.
Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all those lovely social media platforms.
We thank you for listening, and you'll hear us again on another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.